It was an extraordinary statement from the president in the press room of the White House. And I must say that I've not heard President Obama speak like that in some time, with real passion and candor, saying things like, if you're going to lead, lead. That we've got to do tough things, that we've got to ignore the columnists and the talk show hosts and the activists. I'm really challenging both the Republicans and the Democrats. It was a very poignant and passionate and no-holds-barred speech and statement from the president, in light of Speaker Boehner saying he has now walked out of the negotiations with the White House. The president has now summoned Mr. Boehner and the Republican and Democratic leadership to the White House tomorrow morning at 11, and he says he's going to do whatever it is that he must do to save the country from going in default. Joining me now to analyze what we've just seen and where the debt talks go from here, we have Congressman Fattah of Pennsylvania, MSNBC political analyst Pat Buchanan, and Bill Press. Congressman, let me start with you. I mean, what's your call on this? This is an extraordinary evening.
Well, it is, and I think that you saw the president in a very effective way lay out what he had put on the table. So we know, we don't have to guess about it anymore. We know exactly what was on the table in terms of spending cuts and revenue raising, and it seems obvious that the speaker, notwithstanding his best efforts, can't convince House Republicans that for the sake of saving the country and our economy, this is the greatest nation in the world, the wealthiest nation in the world. The notion that we would become the world's deadbeats should be beyond any of us.
Well, he actually quoted Ronald Reagan saying that a default would be below the dignity of the country. Pat Buchanan, you heard the president. It was an extraordinary statement, but he also laid out specifics of what was on the table. He said that the offer had been $1.2 trillion in discretionary funds, the $650 billion in entitlements, and on the other side, just $1.2 trillion in revenues. And they were working it in a way that he felt was more than on his side of the column. It was absolutely tilted toward the Republican side. But he said that he doesn't see that they have the capacity to say yes. How do you respond to that, Pat?
Well, first, I thought the president was extraordinarily effective. I agree with the Congressman Fattah. Secondly, though, Reverend Sharpton, yesterday many conservatives felt we were indeed very close to a deal, and you had a lot of statements out of there that you were going to get an increase in the debt ceiling, you're going to get dramatic spending cuts, and then we're going to go and reform the tax code, drop the rates, and give up all these exemptions, deductions, and things the president doesn't like. And then all of a sudden, Mr. Boehner walked out. And I think Norah O'Donnell's question is critical here. She said Republicans are saying the president, after he met with the Democrats last night, who raised the devil about what he was doing, that the president walked the cat back, that he moved the goalposts. I think, Reverend Sharpton, what we've got to hear is from Mr. Boehner as to what happened between yesterday, when a lot of us, including me, were very optimistic we were close to a big deal and a good deal. What happened to cause Mr. Boehner to walk out? The president said it was the Republicans in the House. Let's hear from Mr. Boehner.
Well, let me say this. Bill is coming on. The president, in response to that, said that they did not move the goalposts. In fact, he said he'd been left standing at the altar too many times here, that he was the one waiting to make the marriage, and that they just didn't show up. So, Bill, I mean, how does that in any way act as though something overnight changed?
Yeah, first of all, let me just say, I'm at the White House every day, right? I see the president very often. I have never seen him as angry as he was tonight, as blunt as he was tonight, or as strong as he was tonight. And I think we know what happened. Look, the president made it very clear. The Republicans can't take yes for an answer, and very clear that John Boehner is not in charge or is not willing to exercise leadership. Al, you said it right. When the president left, that's what we're going to remember from this news conference. If you want to be a leader, you've got to lead. You've got to stand up to members of your own party. John Boehner, for the second time, has shown he's not willing to do that. And in response to Pat's question, we know what happened. Eric Cantor told John Boehner, you don't have my permission to do this, and John Boehner walked away again. Republicans have shown, again, they're not willing to take yes for an answer. So you know what's going to happen? I think we're going to get the Mitch McConnell, Harry Reid plan. They're going to abdicate total responsibility, pass the buck to the president, and he'll sign it.
Well, now, let me just say this to you, Reverend Sharpton.
Yeah, go ahead, Congressman.
If we would assume regular order, now Pat worked in the Reagan White House, regular order back then would have been let Boehner, the Speaker, work it out with the majority leader. When they get a deal, present it to the president for his signature. If Boehner is going to get a better deal from Reid, you know, that we'd be all going to Walt Disney. He had a good deal with the president. Reid is not going to, if he has to negotiate a deal with the Senate, Democrats, it is not going to be as tilted towards the Republicans as the proposal that the president laid out. So Boehner had the best deal he could get. And when you get the...
Well, let me everyone stand by 1 minute.
Let me
just 1 minute,
Congressman Shakar, please.
I will let you do that. But joining me now from the White House is NBC News correspondent Christian Walker. Christian, is there anything you can tell us that has developed since the president's very extraordinary statement?
Well, I would just add, Reverend Sharpton, that he really did seem incredibly frustrated, really at his breaking point, I would say, in terms of these negotiations. As you heard, he called the leaders of both parties back here at 11 a.m. tomorrow. He says, we've got to get going on this. One of the phrases that really stood out from that press conference was he said, time has run out. It's time to get something done. As you know, the president had been pushing for this grand bargain. He wanted to get about $4 trillion in deficit reductions over the next decade. And it looks like at this point that is not going to happen. The president even saying what I would like to see now is the debt ceiling raised through 2013. That's where I believe this focus should be. One other thing that was interesting was that he made the point that he had called Speaker Boehner earlier today, didn't get a call back until he heard from him to say that this deal was in fact going to fall apart. We did get some reaction from Speaker Boehner's office, who says that a deal was never reached and was never really close. So again, there has been a lot of back and forth on both sides. One of the major sticking points was over taxes. As you know, you heard the president just say that we had identified about $1.2 trillion in savings through changes to the tax code. Apparently, the Republicans just weren't buying that all along. They have said they're not going to get behind anything that resembles a tax hike. It seems like ultimately that may have been one of the ending points to this potential deal.
Well, Mr. Buchanan, you heard the president say clearly that he was offering $1.2 trillion. He was putting entitlements and discretionary funds on the table, but he was not willing to do it all on the backs of one side. And that I think in the most graphic language I've heard the president say publicly, he talked about the corporations. He talked about those that were the wealthiest, and he talked about those that would have to choose between their meals at the end of the month. He talked about letters he got. I mean, how do you think the Republicans can respond to the American people hearing the president lay it out like that, Pat?
Very simply, what Mr. Boehner ought to do is go back to his caucus and say the deal was not as close as the president indicated, there were good features to it, and the big deal is dead. Now we're not going to let our country go into default, and we are going to pass a 6-month increase in the debt limit with about $500 billion in cuts that have already been agreed to by the Biden group and by the others, and pass a 6-month increase in the debt limit and send it over to the Senate and to the president and let them decide, the Democratic Senate and the Democratic president, whether they wish to put this government in default or whether they wish to put this government into a position where half of it's got to be shut down. Send it right back over there and put full responsibility on the President of the United States. Give him the cuts he's already accepted and give him an increase in the debt limit.
Let me interrupt this filibuster here, Pat Buchanan. That would be the worst thing the Congress could do, because you know where that puts us? That puts us right into the middle of the 2012 election campaign, which is exactly what these Republicans want. The only reason they have linked the debt ceiling to all this debt reduction, they're not fiscal conservatives. They're playing politics. And
well, Congressman Fattah, you're
6
there.
months.
You're a member of Congress, Congressman Fattah. What happens if they do that? And how do they do that in light of the fact that the president has laid out such a case that even according to polls, Republican voters have said, we want to see some shared sacrifice here?
What's going to happen is what happened today. They did that nonsense in the House this week, sent it to the Senate. Senate voted it down. This is what is actually going to happen. It's in the genius of the design of our government. You're going to get a bipartisan bill out of the Senate. The president is going to be for it. And you're going to see a split screen up, and you're going to see people's pensions and their investments going down on Wall Street next week. And the House, these Tea Party guys, are going to end up having to vote for what comes out in a bipartisan way. Pat Buchanan is talking about a plane flying with one wing. The House can do whatever it wants. The Republicans can do whatever it wants. They don't run the country. This is going to have to be a bipartisan solution. And the best we can do now is look at the design of our government, which allows the Senate to be more reasoned. They run for longer terms. They represent broader constituents. And they're going to do the job that the Speaker and the House majority doesn't seem to have the moral compass to be able to accomplish.
Kirsten, what do you think happens?
The Congressman says that what's going to happen is that we're going to have a bipartisan agreement or no agreement. What he's saying is if it's not bipartisan, Barack Obama will shut down the government and take all the consequences. I don't believe it. I think if we call the president's bluff, send him something over this weekend,
Pat,
and he'll have to sign it, and the Democrats will have to go along with it.
Maybe the president has called your bluff, Republicans' bluff this time, Pat.
Hey, Al, let me get that in there. Yeah, Pat's got it backwards, as usual. No. Right. Call the Republicans' bluff. Let them shut down the government. You know, the president has shown. Wait a minute, Pat. It's my turn now. I just want to say something. Let's get this out there, too. I believe, as a Democrat, what the president was willing to do was a bad deal for the Democrats. It cut Social Security. It cut Medicare. There were no tax revenues right away, not until 2013. I didn't like that deal. But the fact the president showed he was willing to go that last mile to try to get an agreement. The American people know after tonight who's
Let me ask Kirsten at the White House.
Kirsten,
do you think the president's prepared to shut the government down if he has to?
Well, his tone this evening was one of trying to assure the American people that that wasn't going to happen. And it's really one of the critical questions here. One of the reporters brought up the point that the markets are watching this so closely. So even when you're talking about how the markets are responding, we saw the market go up earlier this week when it looked like there was the possibility for a deal. So you can just imagine the potential for what could happen on Monday. So President Obama has made it very clear, and he says he's going to make it clear to those leaders tomorrow.
I think the president clearly said that they need to send a signal to Wall Street over the weekend.
That's right. That's exactly right. He said we have to send a signal to Wall Street. It doesn't seem like he wants to shut the government down over this.
I just want to say something, Reverend.
Let the congressman say something.
Forget what people are saying. Watch what they're doing. The Senate is in session, and they are going to work a deal. The bipartisan group in the Senate. Senator Coburn is not a progressive. The senators who come out, Republicans, for the deal. I saw Lamar Alexander come out for the Gang of Six. You saw the president the other night say that the Gang of Six deal is the way to go.
So you predict the Senate will make a deal?
You get a 70-vote package, Democrat and Republicans out of the Senate. It will be as it was in health care. When Bacchus says this is what we can get the votes for, that was it in terms of affordable health care. That was going to be the deal.
Pat has the Republicans put themselves in a very awkward position because the Tea Party has taken the leadership there and really hijacked the party where Boehner cannot show the strong leadership the president so clearly challenged him to show tonight.
Well, Reverend, you are so wrong on this. The reason John Boehner is sitting alone with the President of the United States is because behind him are the tough folks and the principled folks of the Tea Party who aren't taking any new taxes. That's why Barack Obama has been making one concession after another that he admitted. Now, with regard to Mr. Congressman Fattah, I think that the House Republicans are going to move first and swiftly. That's too complex a deal in the Senate. They simply raise the debt ceiling, put about $500 billion in cuts on it, send it over there. That will calm the markets unless the president vetoes it.
Wait, whoa.
But
reality
Pat,
here.
what was
reality.
concessions? Let me just say this: the congressman's coming in. What was concessions now that it is off the table points to the American people that the president clearly said tonight, I was willing to go all the way. I was willing to take flack from my own party. We have quotes from Senator Feinstein saying she usually doesn't get angry. She was furious last night. He said, I was willing to do all of that, but they couldn't meet me even less than halfway. Don't you guys lose in the end when the American people see who was willing to sacrifice?
You make a very good point, Reverend Sharpton. That's why, according to Nora O'Donnell, the Republican said after the president got the beating from Senator Feinstein and the others, he began to move the goalposts.
Oh, Pat, they've been saying that for 6 months. Pat, the Republicans have been saying that for 6 months. Wait a minute here.
Reverend, wait.
You
got one party.
Congressman Fattah,
You got one party.
I think Pat is trying to make up. I know that Mr. Boehner is speaking at 7:15.
Let me just tell you this, right?
Let's wait until he spins it, Pat, before we say it. I think Nora was asking a question.
Reverend, what Pat knows tonight is we saw a president and a party willing to rise above politics for our nation.
That's
and
what he kept saying.
And you saw another party that shirked and shrank from that responsibility.
Reverend Sharpton, let me. Reverend Sharpton, whoa. Reverend Sharpton,
that's unfair.
Reverend Sharpton, let me get in here if I can, please. All right, just a couple of quick points. Number one, Pat, every time we're on this show, he says the president's talking about raising taxes. He is not talking about raising taxes. I like to deal with facts. I like to deal with facts. Exactly. Okay. The second thing, there's another factor here that nobody's talking about. Because the Tea Partiers will never vote for anything, this plan cannot pass the House without Democratic votes. And I got to tell you, I talked to a lot of Democrats today in the House who will not vote now to cut Social Security and Medicare. So I think the president's got to be careful. And Congressman Fattah can speak to this about how far he goes.
You make the point, Bill. If the Democrats are not going to vote for any of those cuts and things like that, you got to get the House Republicans to do it. They're not going to take any new taxes or revenue enhancements, as you call them, and you can get that across.
Pat, the House Republicans are losers. They don't vote for anything. Forget those guys.
Will this have any effect on them tonight? With the president's statement and the reaction that it will cause to the American people, will it have any effect on them tonight in the House?
Well, I thought the president, quite frankly, listening to the president, I thought he made a powerful, emotional case that he has walked a long way. I don't deny that. I think he's sincere. But it's unfair when we have not heard the argument of the Republicans when it seemed there was something going on. And secondly, the Republicans have a strong position. They should stand by their guns.
Well, Pat, let me ask you this. You were a speechwriter in the White House. You've been someone that has been good with the pen, even though I probably not agreed with what you have written. What could you possibly say to Mr. Boehner, if you could, right now? He's going to speak at 7:15. What can he say now where he doesn't look just like he's being defensive, trying to justify himself? What could he say that could really match the president in rising above the politics and saying to the American people, here's what we're showing that cares? What could he say, Pat?
Here's what I would tell him to say. I would say, look, I'm not as eloquent as the president, and I share his concerns about what is going to happen if we default, and we're not going to allow that. But we also are not going to allow a big revenue enhancement or tax increase on an economy which is flat on its back. So we're going to pass tomorrow. We're going to pass tomorrow an increase in the debt ceiling, and we're only going to put on that increase in the debt ceiling cuts to which Democrats in the House, Vice President Biden, and Republicans have agreed. We're going to do that for 6 months. I know the president doesn't want 6 months.
Why did you walk away?
6 months we can do it.
Why did you walk away, Mr. Boehner? They will ask, why did he walk away? Why did he walk away if he really had the same concern for the American people?
Well, that's why I've asked you, Reverend Sharpton, why don't you listen to the man speak and before you condemn him as the guilty party?
Hey, look.
Wait, because
I have a lot of respect for
Reverend Sharpton, can I just jump in for a second?
Gentlemen and lady, just a second. Let me bring in one more voice. Sirius XM radio host Joe Madison. But Joe, as you come in, I think I heard Kirsten Walker, you wanted to say something at the White House?
Right, just in terms of the type of pressure that Speaker Boehner's been getting, we've been trying to gauge this all week long because these talks have been going back and forth. He is, according to our reporting, getting quite a bit of pressure, especially from some of those Tea Party freshmen who have come in and are just adamant that they're not going to support anything that looks like a plan that would increase taxes. In fact, earlier this week, a whole group of them gathered outside the White House. They, remember, don't even believe Treasury Secretary Timothy Geithner's assertion that we're going to default on August 2nd. So they think they're being lied to. So he's dealing with an immense amount of pressure from a lot of his freshman Republicans who really are quite strong in numbers.
Yeah, but the problem is you've got the tail wagging the dog here.
You joined us. Joe, would you give us your assessment of this extraordinary night?
Well, she's absolutely right. In talking to Charlie Rangel today, he talked about the Democrats having the same problem with the boll weevils and the blue dog Democrats, and he says it's a matter of arithmetic.
Leadership.
And because of that, Boehner is showing very poor leadership. Look, Pat's a good friend. The 6 months is not going to fly because he knows, look, August is out because you're vacationing, Thanksgiving holiday, Christmas holiday. You'll be lucky to get 3 months out of that 6 months that you're proposing that they raise the debt ceiling. And the reality is that the American people, there are more unemployed people, underemployed people, people who are watching their neighbors' homes being foreclosed, and there are wealthy people, and the argument still flies. If these are job creators, they don't want to sacrifice an increase in taxes. Hey, where are the jobs?
That's the bottom line. I got to go, but let me say
Let me respond very briefly, Joe.
No, Reverend, let me just say you got to have
this with this Democratic president. Haven't you really blown an opportunity here? Here's a Democratic president that was willing to do this. Even people like Brooks was saying, do this now. And I think you saw a president that said, I've gone as far as I can go. Now you're going to walk out. You're going to leave me standing at the altar again. We have got to just stop it. The time has run out. How do you respond to that?
Republicans have to stop acting like they've got one house.
Let me respond to Joe Madison, too, for heaven's sakes.
Go ahead.
Now, Joe says we can't do it in 6 months because 3 months are wasted on these holidays. Joe, isn't 6 months better than 1 week if we're facing a default?
Hey,
it certainly is. Vote to 6 months with some cuts
listen to
and
Moody's.
put it through.
Listen to Standard & Poor's. The market will not take 6 months. They need more assurance than that. They need more confidence than that.
All right, gentlemen, let's get back. Gentlemen and Christian, just a second. Let me let the congressman have the last word.
Look, the Republicans are under some illusion that we got a one-house form of government. Let the president step back. Let Boehner work out whatever he can work out with Harry Reid. He's going to end up with a deal that none of the Republicans will be able to vote for in the House. If he's got to negotiate with Harry Reid, he should proceed with the agreement with the president.
Well,
you'll default if you do that, Congressman. You'll default if you do that. Republicans won't go for it.
Let me say this.
Hey, we're not afraid of any boogeymen, Pat. We're going to proceed forward, and we're not compromising.
I think that we will be watching what happens at the White House tomorrow at 11 o'clock. I hope the adults come in the room. I hope real leadership stays. And I hope we all do what is best for the country. I saw a president tonight, though, that I think I want to see more of. I'd like to thank you all for joining me tonight. A live edition of Hardball starts right now.